people who are on. There you go.
Gotta go back.
Yes, go back.
Um,
everything.
So, when the one thing I did leave out is that with the company that I started with in Waterford, I was presented the opportunity to work as a firefighter EMT, and I did, which is also a good experience. But, specifically Sandisfield, I went to the busy departments, I went to a lot of fires, I ran a lot of calls, did a lot of medicals. And one of the things that I think is unbelievably interesting about Sandisfield is you guys are in a position where whoever comes in and does this job has the ability to really make effective and positive change, right? If I were to, apply, I don't know, we'll say in the city of Boston as a fireman or as an officer in a leadership position, there isn't much I'm going to be able to do to impact the quality of service that's delivered, right? You're kind of, this is the way it's been done since the 1800s. It's not going to change. And it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of sit in a gear and they propel you through what they want. And, I'm not interested in that, right? I feel like, especially with the business, one of the things that I absolutely loved about the business, was like the ability to like negotiate, to work with people, to come up with processes that like critical development of like logistics and trying to figure things out. And to me, this is like the best of both worlds, right? You have a system that needs a little polishing. You guys are obviously looking for that change to exist. It's a great bridge for me to be able to do the things that I like doing, be a fireman at the same time, and then, be able to like showcase the ability to resolve issues and work through problems. One of the things that I really do like about Sandisfield that attracts me to the position more than anything else, is that you guys have the same responsibility of level of service that you have to provide to the community with an 18th of the resources, right? The fires are still the same. They're just as hot. The medicals, the heart attacks, the CPR calls, they're just as serious, right? The people that are affected are equally affected the same way they are in Sandisfield as they are in Boston. So the challenge to provide that level of service, which everybody deserves, right? That level of service here, based on decisions that you make, high quality decisions, I mean, that's unparalleled. I don't know anywhere else that I'm going to apply where I'm going to have that opportunity.
Thank you.
How, you know that we have a 501c3 that owns the two fire stations.
Yes.
And it's been a little bit of a tenuous relationship. How do you feel about working with that?
This is I'm gonna take this off. This is I was hoping the AC was cranking, but for anybody watching, it is not.
Does he want something to drink? Like, you want
If you want to grab a water, that'd be fantastic. I appreciate it. But no rush.
Thank you.
So I'm familiar with the situation. Coming from a volunteer background, I also understand the concept of the 503c. Essentially a benefit organization to benefit the volunteer company, but it's always been in the role that I've seen in a position to support the fire company and what they're doing. So buying furniture, raising money to help out the members, or doing things like, donating to help install playgrounds for the community. It was always a community-based thing. And I think that, and again, this is my opinion based off the things I appreciate it. The things that I have seen and the things that I've read, and while I don't want to say something that's incorrect, right? That's factually not correct. Because again, my exposure is really superficial. But I think that the 503c situation, right? At the end of the day, and we'll just play devil's advocate. They don't believe that they've done anything wrong. And they believe that they're doing what's in the best interest of their members, and they think that they're doing what's in the best interest of the community. I genuinely believe that I don't think anybody's going out and maliciously trying to cause unnecessary issues. However, you may be doing the best job in the world, right? And again, I'll use the business reference. You could go out and, I could mow a lawn. It could come out great, striped, 10 out of 10, like best product could ever put out, right? But if you don't like it because the stripes go a certain way versus, what it is you're looking for, you're not happy, right? the thing that I think needs to be brought across, and the reason why I use that example is that a lot of it's about perception, right? If you might be doing the right things, but if the perception isn't well received, you need to either communicate more effectively, be more transparent, or come up with a different way to do things, right? I mean, at the end of the day, right? The private organization needs to understand like why they exist, right? And it's supposed to be a benefit to the fire service. It's supposed to be a benefit to the community. And when you take a left on that mission, that's when you start to run into problems. And I think that it requires, I guess the best way to put it would be a realignment to those priorities, right? To kind of like focus back in on what are we supposed to do? Obviously, I understand the idea of the firehouse situation. The fact that Sandisfield's in a situation where you don't have control over, in 90 days, right? You can say like, hey, come get the fire trucks. And even then, that might even be an argument, right? Because I know that part of it was who owns the fire trucks. The whole point of this is to be able to provide a service to the community, right? A business model, they're the customers, that's the end of the day, right? There is nothing else more important. So I think that my ability to work with the members of the private company is to kind of understand where they're coming from, come up with some type of reasonable solution and say like, hey, like, all right, well, what are you concerned about? Are you concerned, because they might say like, hey, listen, like the town's out to get us, right? They might feel that, based on history or whatever. And then this is just me talking, or I don't know kind of how the whole thing got spun up. I just know that it did. To come back together and just kind of like realign that focus and try to resolve those issues and figure out where they're coming from and work through it. At the end of the day, they also need to realize that the question is being raised about the ability to perform effective public safety, right? That's not something hard stop that you can play games with, right? I mean, somebody calls 911, somebody expects somebody to show up, period. Anything that derails that or interferes with that, especially if the concern is raised about, the instability of the fact that the town may or may not have control over the fire service is enough to where it's worth the conversation to either alleviate those concerns, come up with a better solution, or altogether come up with a completely different way of doing business, right? I mean, that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
That was like a whole.
Yeah, that wasn't an easy question.
That's a rental.
Well, it's also a matter of understanding that most of the firefighters not most, some of the firefighters that are on the team are also members of the SFDI. Symbolically, I think they all are and attend the meeting, so it's really, everything is very,
Convoluted,
it's tangled.
Sure.
So yeah, I think you're right too, but.
which not for on a note to that is a very common thing among volunteer fire companies, right?
Sure.
A lot of them were established, in the 50s as a civil service unit after like World War II. And that's how they received the donations. That's how they received, the apparatus or equipment, right? So
Sure.
that was the intended purpose. So, obviously like that kind of stuff like morphs on, but that was, so, that's.
Yeah,
history.
I want to make sure you were aware of our particular situation as well. Janie, would you like to ask anything or?
Yeah, I just have one question. So how would you go about handling the fire department who might not receive so well some of the ideas that you might bring forward? Just because, like
Sure.
you said, things have always been the way that they are, and change is a difficult thing for a lot of people to come to terms with. So how would you go about navigating that?
Sure, I think that most of the people that are there, right, they really genuinely want to do a good job, right? They want to perform well, right? Nobody wants to be put in that position to not be successful or be in a position to be unsuccessful. I understand that some of the proposals that I think, like, for example, getting the department qualified to a minimum national standard is important, right? I think it benefits them. I think it benefits the community. That's my opinion. That would be one of my objectives, is to bring the certification level up to a minimum, right? And just to use that as the example, I mean, I'm not going to challenge the fact that 20 years experience matters, because it does, right? You're not going to bar experience. The certifications matter as well. And I think that having a conversation and kind of laying out that stuff is important, right? There's compliance related issues that exist. There's safety related issues that exist. And I think that while some of the stuff might not be well understood or well received, taking the time to explain it to them and taking the time to sit at a table and say, these are my ideas. I need your input. Giving people buy-in alleviates a lot of those problems, right? Like, hey, listen, I'm not going to get everything I want and you're not going to get everything you want, but we can walk away with a product that matters, right? But at the end of the day, there's three priorities. And I think that as long as anybody that has buy-in or any of the individuals that have a concern related to it understands these priorities and can work with me on resolving them. And like I said, they might have a better idea. This isn't like the way it has to be, right? A lot of this is dynamic, right? Like I said about Sandisfield having, it's a small town having to provide the same level of service. All of this stuff needs to be out of the box thinking. It has to. Somebody else might have a great idea. That might not be mine, but being open-minded and resolving those issues, that's the only way that you're going to be able to do it. You have to have everybody to come to the table. You have to work together as a team. I am not the fire department. Hypothetically, I'd be the leader of the organization, right? I need a team and I cannot isolate that team in the process. But again, the three priorities, safety, performance, and compliance has to happen. So if they have a better idea that aligns with that, I'm all for it. Very open-minded. Because I haven't been doing it like that for 30 years.
Thank you.
So for those who don't know, Mike has done more research than any other candidate that I can imagine. He's also, since his last interview, his first interview, has provided an unbelievable amount of suggestions and proposals. In the ambulance billing reform proposal, Heart Safe Community Certification Initiative, firefighter recruitment retention strategy, bunk room live-in program proposal. I'd have to say that would have to be on hold until we
Sure.
come up with a situation with the firehouses. Firefighter 1 certification training access plan, which involves not sending all our guys to Springfield to get trained, but actually bringing someone into town to train them. Department recognition and morale programs, and then regional fire and EMS consolidation plan, among a few other things. That's just all it's listed on this one particular email. I'm impressed with what you've provided.
I
Oh, in
appreciate it.
addition, he's also provided standard operating procedures. That's something that our last fire chief had supposedly worked on for 6 months and never provided anything, yet wanted a raise to do it. We have a candidate that's not even hired by the town who provided it in a week. More than impressed with what you've provided.
I appreciate that.
I guess those are all opinions. Question. I have several. So one of them would be just, I mean, we discussed it, but maybe informing the people in the audience. What would be your plan? You live an hour and a half plus away.
Yep.
What would be your plan to get yourself into town, to be present, to be on scene?
Sure. So obviously, until I move up here, that's that's obviously a big thing. But one of the reasons why I came to the town meeting was because I would be moving with my girlfriend, which by the way, she's fire 2 EMT. Right. So she'd be coming with me. She's fantastic, funny as hell. But she I think actually, yeah, she's watching now. But and obviously, my son is 5, right? Funniest kid. But actually, since we talked, I found a property in Tallinn. I gave the nice lady a $500 deposit, explained the situation that I'm in the process, and obviously a decision has to be made, and she's gonna hold it for me. She said for a month, but I feel bad doing that to anybody, right? I might not get my deposit back, but that's but obviously if afforded the opportunity, right, to get the appointment, I would move to town or as close as I possibly can. Obviously, there's external factors. I can't control the real estate market. I'm not going to pay $1 million for 2,500 square feet. Not going to happen. right? But that's, essentially what I would do is relocate to be able to do that. In the interim, I have reached out to the new Boston, the inn. And at least temporarily until that's resolved. Working out, it was a brief conversation. I basically said, would I be able to rent something maybe like for a month or two, so I have somewhere to sleep while I'm up here instead of like getting a hotel, which does not exist anywhere in this general area. Well, and so that's what I was looking at. So, we'll just say hypothetically speaking, if, afforded the opportunity, 7 days is, I think it was all it would take for me to, be here. But either way, I mean, it's still an hour and a half ride, from Norwich, an hour and 29 minutes from New Haven. But I would, you would see me at the firehouse. Like one of the things that we talked about, and especially the situation that exists right now, is I know the job is posted for 9 to 19 hours a week, part-time. Anybody that comes in here and says that they can do this part-time until everything's squared away and, kind of like fluid and running on its own and some of the kinks are worked out, would either be much more intelligent than I am or just lying. It is just not physically possible. So, either way, I would have to be here 5-6 days a week, 10-12 hour days to be able to like work on a lot of this stuff, right? And the department has issues that need to be resolved ASAP. And so, obviously relocating, being available is something that has to happen, right? I saw in a report, again, this is external information. I think it was in your minutes and I think it was reported by the previous chief that the town of Sandisfield Fire Department missed 42% of their 911 calls related to EMS. That's a 50-50 shot that if you call 911, somebody's going to show up. To me, if I like taking the position of chief isn't just, I get a stipend, I get a car, I get to talk on the radio. That's not what this is about, right? Like the responsibility ends with me. Every time that ambulance doesn't get out, or anytime the fire truck doesn't get out to resolve the issues, and not just get out eventually, get out in a reasonable amount of time, that's on me. That is my responsibility. I'm the kind of person where I'm going to stay here if I question the fact that the ambulance can't get out. It's not going to happen. If that means that I'm the only person showing up every single time to be able to make sure something gets out, that is the responsibility that I understand that I'm taking, right? That's on me, right? I can't sit here and, you guys ask like, hey, you guys got retone, like what's going on? Like that is my response. There is nobody else to blame. That is me. I would ask, give me like 90 days, but like, I got on a tangent, but to answer your question, I would relocate. I relocate as fast as I possibly can. And either way, you would still see me in town at least 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week. That is where we're at in order to be able to resolve this. Maybe.
Is that sustainable based on the stipend?
Long term, no, but my situation is a little different. My contracts that I have in my business, I subcontracted it. So I still have sustainable primary income. So I'm not, I'm still working, but everything I can do is, remote, like, hey, the guy didn't show up, like, when's he gonna be there? I don't know. Make a phone call, right? So I can do a lot of that stuff. So it doesn't matter if I'm here or in Connecticut or what have you, I can still be able to operate the aspects of the business that I need to, without it really barring, any financial issues.
One of, at our annual town meeting, the voters approved a full-time EMT/fire admin position. And I don't know if it's possible, would it be possible to potentially offer it to the fire chief, who is an EMT? And boost his effective salary from 15 to 67 plus benefits.
You'd have to apply like everybody else, but yeah.
Yep.
Plus his significant other.
Yeah.
So.
Again, with your, the document you sent with all your recommendations, I too was impressed. You definitely spent some time thinking it over and reviewing it. I saw your resume. I didn't see any work with and I may have missed it, but with budgets. So as you've probably seen, the budget isn't huge
Sure,
You know, it's,
like 170,000 total, right?
This year I think we're up to 230.
yeah, we're up to 230 because we added a position, but yeah, last year we were at 176, good,
Sure.
great memory. Have you had any experience creating any sort of capital plans, based on limited means?
Sure. I was not handed the business, I'm an entrepreneur,
Sure.
right? And when it comes to making a penny, a dollar through longevity, right? I have done it, right? I started with a truck and a lawnmower and going out and, trying to build my business, right? Hoping that I get paid on time and hoping like that there's not an issue, like robbing Peter to pay Paul to be able to put gas in the truck to go to the next place, right? To be able to do those things. And fixing stuff that I have, like, I can't afford. I remember, like, not to get in the weeds, but I blew a rear end in one of my internationals. I have no idea how to do, I didn't at the time know how to do rear ends, but I did because I didn't have a choice, and I did it myself because I couldn't afford to do it. As the business scaled, at the peak point of myself performing, I had 175 employees. And we did, north of $10 million a year in revenue. Covering from Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, all over New England, like regionally. Part of the contracts that I have, and to give you an idea, like one of the substantial contracts that we managed was Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Targets, that kind of stuff. A lot of those contracts, the way it works, and when I say exterior maintenance, we also did HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all the trades. And that was the business model, is kind of going after, like, instead of hiring 50 guys to do 50 different things, we'll just do everything.
Sure.
But the way the contract, like what Walmart works, is they would say, Mike, these are the stores you're responsible for. This is a PM contract, preventative maintenance contract. You're budgeted between these stores $1 million, and these are just hypothetical numbers, but $1 million to be able to resolve and be able to make sure these systems don't go offline, right? Like the closest one to here, I think, is in Westfield, right? Any one of those stores are protect probably between like $250,000 to $500,000 worth of refrigeration product that I became responsible for with this contract. And Walmart's concept was, this is our budget, this is what it is, make it work. If you accept it, like, we had to propose it, and obviously, this is what we think it's going to cost. But I was responsible for making sure all that worked. So when things blew up that were not my responsibility, this was contractual, right? There was zero chance that I was calling back up and saying, I need an extra $100. They would say, not my problem, hang up the phone.
Sure.
Right. So between, obviously between revenue, which is the money that would be coming in, with taxpayer funds, between trust funds, the payroll, 941s, W3s, et cetera. Understanding the trust fund account, sales tax, I understand that kind of stuff. Budgetary work as far as understanding where you're at and where you need to be. I did it through a series of KPIs and metrics. I know that we talked about it before, but for anybody who doesn't know, a KPI stands for a key performance indicator. So, you're basically tracking trends and being able to predictively, mitigate a lot of these problems based on information that's presented to you. So as far as tracking it, obviously I did it really well. I was unbelievably motivated because it was my money.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So there was a hell of a good reason to be like accurate and good at it. I've gone through audits before. So I have been on the receiving end of, I should have did that a little bit better.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I am unbelievably confident when it comes to managing a budget, coming in under budget, right? Just because you have a little money left over doesn't mean spend it so that way you don't lose it next year. That's not right.
Sure.
But I feel very, very confident in the ability to do so, and I understand line item allocations, bonds, especially non-surety, insurance, coverages, et cetera. So
Yeah, we would actually, we have a capital plan for our vehicles and for the fleets, and it would be a matter of you, assessing, I guess, when you start and prioritizing how we come up with the funds, or what we need to come up with, rather.
sure.
As the process evolves. So some of that speculation, I just figured I'd touch.
So yeah, on that example, I am
Yeah.
very confident and very familiar in the understanding of debt service to assets to a municipality. In that situation, I would present to you different options. You can go with used, new, or just get rid of it.
Sure.
Here's the thing. The way that I see the relationship working, right? And I know this isn't, one of the questions, but I think it might alleviate some of the questions or answer some of them proactively. you guys are the ones that say, this is the goal, this is what we want, period. Right? It is my job and my responsibility to produce what it is you guys are asking for. I want to reduce the amount of apparatus in the firehouses. Okay, I will present you plans and you make the decisions on which one. Right? It's my responsibility, and the job is to follow through with the things that you ask. So if you want a debt service plan, where's our liabilities? What is it that we need to do?
Yep.
It is my job to present you options, and you guys make the decision. You're ultimately responsible for taxpayer money.
That particular example, I would hope that you would present to us the equipment that would be needed, not us dictate to you.
No,
But
so
you-
when I say that, I say that in a broad
Yeah.
form, right? Like, how many trucks do we have? We have 10, or well, what is it, 7 total, 8 total, right?
This is the funny part, during our interview, I would mention we have this truck, he goes, yeah, the 2007 International, like, you know,
Yeah.
every truck, every model.
Yeah, I like fire trucks, right? It's like a fun fact, I own 3. I own 3 of them.
Gonna bring him to Sandisfield?
That was one of the things we talked about, is that there was a nuclear option hypothetically, what would happen?
Well, you said there was nuclear option, you didn't tell me that you own.
So hypothetically, one of the things that we had talked about in full transparency is if things went south and for whatever reason, access to fire equipment and resources were limited or restricted. And my answer was, if that ever happened, tomorrow, we would have 3 new fire trucks sitting in the parking lot, no questions asked, and continue providing service without a problem. I have a tower ladder, and 2 Class A engines. It was actually a tower ladder from the city of Waterbury.
It's awesome.
I'm gonna keep on asking questions.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I'm
I think
told
this is
not to.
fun.
Keep going.
I guess I'll ask the easier one first. In your resume, I see that you've been in EMT. It doesn't look like you're currently in EMT. Is your EMT, what is your current EMT status?
So my EMT in the state of Connecticut is current and valid. It's been
Okay.
current and valid without lapse since 2011, 2012, I'm
Okay.
lying. 2012. I can show you right now.
No,
Okay.
I take your word for that.
If you go on the Connecticut e-license website, I think actually every state like.
I'm only asking you because there looks like there's a lapse on
Oh.
your resume, so
No, that's.
if you tell me that there's no lapse, I take it.
Yeah, there's no lapse.
And
That's
it's a
probably-
Connecticut license, is
It's
it?
Connecticut.
So how do you transfer it to Mass?
So I emailed and talked to Massachusetts OEMS on the phone 2 weeks ago. No,
I think you asked.
Last week.
Prior to.
Last
the-
week.
Okay,
well, they actually sent me the form last week, so I talked to them again.
okay,
So I have the form. So essentially what I need to do is I have to fill out this form. And then I also have to have the Connecticut OEMS sign off basically that I'm not under investigation. I don't have any malpractice suits, what have you going. And then they sign off on it. And then I send it to Massachusetts OEMS. They process it. They verify my level of certification. So they basically make sure the protocols in Connecticut are similar or matched to the state of Massachusetts. You had talked about like the canine thing. And one of the things that, she had told me on the phone is that, one of the stipulations might be, I have to take that or do, a 12-hour refresher or something like that. But essentially it's pretty seamless. She told me the process, depending on how fast I go, could be between 30 and 60 days. But I don't have to test again. I don't have to do any of that stuff. It's just a matter of, I might have to do a 12-hour refresher or something.
all right. And then my other question that I have lined up here is long-term goals. We have another candidate just flat out state that this is not his long-term goal. Sounds like if you're investing yourself in a property in or near town and bringing your family here, you're probably investing yourself for a more serious long-term goal.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you'll have me, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we get 6 months into this and you guys aren't happy with the way things are going, right? I would expect nothing less than for you to exercise your ability to say, we need to change again, right? I don't plan on going anywhere. This is a commitment that that I want to do until A, the issue is resolved, or, B, this is gonna be at minimum a 5 to 7 year resolution, right? Fixing the issues that exist are not gonna happen tomorrow. There'd be improvements, but a real sustainable solution is a 5 to 7 year plan that really needs to kind of come forth. And that, obviously, that's moving down the road. even if I didn't do it as the capacity of chief, right? I also, this is my personal opinion, I don't think that somebody should be chief for more than 10 years. I think that's bad. I think that's bad for the fire service. I think it's bad for the organization. I think that changing around leadership, the idea of like the president or like being a selectman or whatever, like the concept of term limits, it's the same idea. You know, I don't intend to do it greater than, 10 years. I think that that's, like I said, it's not good, right? You need a new generation of people, you need new leadership, you need new ideas, you need new perspectives. You have to do that. Otherwise you become stagnant, and not for nothing, you end up in the same situation that you're in right now, right? It's a good service and I get it. And I think that's great, but, the other thing too is in this process of sustainability, right? Which is, I'm assuming the basis of the question is that, from day one, it's gonna be, at the end of the day, I'm the new guy, right? I have to earn their respect and prove to them that I know what I'm doing, right? So that means riding fire trucks, going on calls, stretching lines. I have to do that, right? That's the culture of the fire service, and I am not gonna change that, right? I may be the guy in charge, but it doesn't mean they're gonna respect me, right? The way they're gonna respect me is by showing up and doing the same work or doing it twice as hard, right? Once we achieve that, the next process is developing leadership, right? You need to have some type of continuity. What if I'm on vacation, right? What if I get sick, right? Anybody could get into an accident tomorrow, God forbid, and things could happen. There needs to be continuity. So having like leadership development, between the deputy chiefs, the assistant chiefs, the lieutenants, all that stuff has to exist, right? And they have to feel comfortable doing it. Right. So I think in part of that process for sustainability is you need the right people that can stand up and learn the right way to do things. Not saying that the way they're doing it is wrong. I'm not saying that operationally whatsoever. I don't know that answer. And I don't want anybody, if there's anybody watching or listening, to think that like I'm accused of them not doing it right. Like that's not even close to what I'm saying. I'm just when it comes to sustainability, there is multiple people on the team, right? And like I said, 5 to 7 years, I think, is what it's gonna take to resolve it, and I think that if I'm chief longer than 10 years, there's a bigger problem.
We talked about it in your initial interview, but can we discuss your ideas for, I lost the word, retention and,
Yeah.
and attracting new members?
Do you want me to relay that? Or talk about it?
Present it to these are the most active members of the Sandisfield.
You're the biggest pains. Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate it and I look forward to
You and the fabulous.
it. So,
Just before you start,
yeah.
this is driving me crazy. Steve, would you look at your sock and see if that's a tick on the outside of it, please? I don't know if it is or not.
No, that's a logo.
No, okay.
Thank you.
Almost.
I didn't want you to get bit. Okay.
So,
Also, I don't know who each of you guys are. I know he knows who Bob is, but I didn't hear you guys introduce.
I did my research. I did my research. Right?
That's your picture on the wall at home.
Right, and your last name is Fields, you own a tree company.
Yep.
Yeah, so I did a significant amount of reseach to at least know who my
Yeah,
audience.
Have you seen some of the stuff he's already sent us? It's like the FBI.
One of the things that is different about the volunteer fire service, and I thought about it, one of the examples that like we had talked about was Monterey that just approved, $400,000 or whatever it is to provide paid staff, right? That is ultimately a setup for failure, okay? Complete setup of failure, right? You're an EMT. Call comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning, you gotta work at 7. Why do you get up and go?
If I get up and go.
No, but I mean, right, but you made the commitment, right? You signed up for, a duty crew, whatever. You're responsible. You gotta go to work in 5 hours and this call is gonna take at least 3. Why do you get up and do it?
So that's my responsibility.
Right, that's that level of commitment that exists in the volunteer service,
Right.
right? And not saying that everybody wants to go around and, have a pat on the back and, thanks for coming today, like, the mentality helps, don't get me wrong, it absolutely helps, but one of the things that we had talked about is not losing that, right? Are you gonna get up if you know there's a paid guy sitting at the firehouse? No, you're not, I wouldn't, there's a guy there, what am I getting up for? He's getting paid to be there and I gotta go to work, I'm not going up. So, when we talk about recruitment and retention, some municipalities are taking the perspective of throwing money at it to resolve the issue. And what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna get less manpower or less men per call. And when I say men per call, the amount of members that pull up, you're gonna get less manpower per call. You're gonna get people that are gonna be like, I'm not going to the, the fall and stuff like that. And you lose that drive, right? And I use you as the example to be able to prove this point, that the volunteer system functions on responsibility. So you provide that level of responsibility to engage membership, and you do that by making it beneficial to them to do it. One of the things we talked about was that National Volunteer Fire Council, Sandisfield, is not a member of it. I checked immensely, could not find it. It may be back in the day, but it hasn't been in the past 5 years. The National Volunteer Fire Council is basically a giant organization that goes to Washington, D.C., local states. There's a local chapter in Massachusetts that lobby in the interest of the volunteer fire service. They also offer immense benefits to them, right? The minute that you pay the $250 a year membership for your card, you get an additional $10,000 in accidental death and dismemberment to the members. So God forbid something happens, you get access to that insurance policy. Being a fireman, say God forbid, I don't know, you got hurt at work or whatever it is, and you're having a workman's comp issue, or you got hurt at the firehouse. There's a stipend program where they'll produce up to $750 a week to support volunteer firemen as a stipend to offset it, as long as you prove the financial need. Sandisfield is a great example. We have a career department. The budget is what it is. There's not a taxable income. So to be able to have those benefits, knowing that, like, obviously, a lot of people are apprehensive to get involved in the fire service because you have a full-time job, right? What are you gonna do? Go and break your leg at the firehouse and, put your job in jeopardy? It's not paying the bills, right? But having those those special benefits, right? 25% off college tuition immediately for select colleges, right? If I was in college, or if I was gonna go to college and I'm 17, 18 years old, 25% is huge. That's absolutely huge. So to encourage like a younger generation of people, listen, you want to go to school for this stuff, volunteer at the firehouse, contribute your time, we'll give you 25% off college tuition. And kind of circling back to all this is that, we need to do things to be able to make people want to be there. That's the fundamental concept of the volunteer fire service, is that they want to do it. When you step out of that, right, then again, you run into problems. It's not a recruitment issue, it's a leadership issue, right? You need people to want to be there. And I think that as a town, and as an organization, Sandisfield needs to, and I'm not putting this on you guys, right? That comes from a leadership standpoint from the fire service, right? There's no way that you guys would have known this existed unless you were involved in professional classes, forums, like that kind of stuff, right? There is zero like recognition and like, any type of affirmation to the volunteers as well. One of the things we talked about is, I know you guys appoint firemen, right? That's something that's very different in Massachusetts and Connecticut. I haven't seen a single thing in the Sandisfield Times or on Facebook or anywhere where there's been a badge pinning ceremony, right? Or promotional ceremonies. Like, do you want to talk about a way to bring the community together, give people that, are really like doing the work, the opportunity to, be able to stand up and have their loved ones pin a badge on them, swear in, take an oath, like, that's a huge town event. That's fantastic. Those are little things that bring everything together. The idea of the community-based fire service, but that affirms that to the volunteer, right? And again, Steve's example was, because I'm responsible. I have to do this because it's my responsibility. What better way to affirm a lot of these things, and this is the retention concept, than taking an oath by being proud of what it is that you're doing? 90% of this stuff and the issues you're running into are solely based on pride.
Sure.
Right? So instead of using it to where, it's like this, like, we can do a lot of things to really make people feel proud about doing a good job, right? By being productive in those responses. And I think that, aside from the benefits, aside, of like, one of the things that we talked about was the bunk room, which obviously, like, we'll see how it goes, right? But having people live at the firehouse. What better way, if you're 18, you have an opportunity to move out of the firehouse? There's a set of rules where you got to go to calls or whatever. We staff the hot firehouse for free. We offer 25% off college tuition, and no other firehouse in the area offers a live-in program. I reached out to people that I know that are looking for a live-in program, right? They like the wildland firefighting stuff. They like the rural stuff. If we've opened a bunk room tomorrow, I could staff it with qualified people maybe 6 to 8 of them to live in the firehouse tomorrow. I've already asked just to see if I could do it. We need to provide these opportunities to make people want to, like I said, 18, hanging out with my friends, going to fires, going to calls and stuff. Like, you know, I don't know if anybody was in the military, but it's essentially the same concept, right? You live with these guys, you eat with these guys. Like, there is no better friends you're gonna produce, right? No better friends. And doing these things and not just a lot of this stuff comes from on better understanding of the volunteer system as it exists, right? That there's more to it than, you know, again, I don't know the circumstances of Monterey. I just know they threw a lot of money on it.
Sure.
Money doesn't necessarily fix all your problems,
Sure.
right? We as a town and as a department can do things to recruit and retain people by just making simple ideas. This is what we were talking about, you know, the out of the box concept, the same level of performance and service that needs to exist, but doing it in a fashion that is just out of the box. Nobody does it, so let's do it, right? And you know, those are some ideas. One of the things that, like obviously they were talking about with everything, regardless if I am afforded the opportunity to be chief, I presented that stuff to you because A, I like doing it. 2, there's no better way for you to understand what my viewpoint is and what you're gonna get. Because listen, like owning a business, right? One of the worst things is that like when you go to hire somebody, you have no idea who you hired until you got them, right? Like you think it might be a great deal until it's not. You know what I mean? Right, seriously, right? So one of my ways I thought would be beneficial, especially in a situation like this, is to provide you with framework and basically saying like, we're not gonna talk about it, tell you all the things I can do. You said there's no SOPs, I gave you SOPs.
I have a
It's like,
question about the SOP,
Yeah.
SOG. Did you write it or is it
So-
boilerplate and modified?
there's 3 different parts of that. One, I referenced the NFPA standard. So a lot of that stuff is based off that standard. 2, I took a lot of the NFPA standard and adjusted it to the town of Sandisfield. And then 3, I used ChatGPT to be able to help me like, you know, word it, basically take all my notes, everything that I want to do, and then put it in a format, you know, to do it. So it took me like, I don't know, a week or so to be able to do it. It's a 109-page document. But if you read through it, it
I
is,
actually asked ChatGPT if ChatGPT wrote it.
what did ChatGPT say?
30%.
There you go. Right, I mean, essentially what I did was I typed up everything that I thought was
There's
important.
nothing- it's a
Yeah,
great
it's,
tool.
oh my
I-
God,
I-
it's efficient as all.
I mean, I was
hell,
just wondering.
Yeah, so standard, my ideas, and then I use ChatGPT to organize it and put it in a fashion where it's readable, organized, and you know, makes sense. But you know, again, if you want to talk about like personnel management and time management, right? The use of like AI and these resources are massive.
Yeah. Is that the same with the proposals?
Yeah, same thing.
You-
I built out the framework of it and I used ChatGPT to put it together in a fashion that makes sense.
Good deal.
When I take notes, I am all over the place. When my ideas are going, like I'm all over the place, right? And one of the biggest things, you know, that has helped me immensely is being able to use tools like that to basically take your ideas and you know, kind of comma here, period here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell that, I can just tell by your memory, the detail in your memory that you're not fully just reliant on ChatGPT.
No, but if I were to, you listen to these conversations, we
Yeah.
go from A to Z and
Yeah.
somewhere to H. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's how my brain thinks, right? So I also understand in a professional development sense of the things that I need to do to be able to be productive as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Grant writing, do you have any experience?
I do. So one of the benefits of the National Volunteer Fire Council is you get access to certain level grants. I was gonna email you this today, but I ran out of time. I have a spreadsheet. I've identified 118 grants that the town of Sandisfield is available for in this fiscal year. One of the things that sucks, there's one that opens up tomorrow that I could almost guarantee we could get awarded $10,000. I got it last year for the department. So if you want to hang out afterwards, I can show you how to write it real quick. You just gotta sign. I swear to God, you'll get it like 110%. It's a state farm grant. It's very easy, but I've identified a significant amount of grants. I have experience. I've worked on the safer grants, AFG, the Assistance Firefighter Grant. I've gotten a good amount of grants awarded. One of the bigger safer projects that I was working on, you know, was to be able to upgrade a building and a rescue truck to be able to accommodate the needs for, you know, the highway. Basically, the Clover system on the interstates, right, are incredibly dangerous. In our first due, like we have Cloverleaf where like we're out there all the time for tractor trailers that are rolled over. And so my saber grant was written in the concept of, you guys built this, we're responsible for taking care of it, we need a new rescue. Let's work together on this. And it's in the final stage right now. It was a $1.7 million grant. So, to answer your question, in short, yes, I took classes. That was one of the things I did at Emmitsburg and the Connecticut Fire Academy was, how to write grants. One of the things that I offered Janie is, even if grants are outside of the fire service, you might have to get somebody that tells me, like, I don't know, municipal, some of the like ordinance in Massachusetts, but if you tell me the stuff that exists, I know how to write grants. So, one of the things that I offered was the ability to help write grants for the town of Sandisfield outside of just the fire service. If I'm here and I know how to do this stuff, there is no reason why, you guys shouldn't, if I know how to do it, we should work together to be able to do this. It only helps everybody.
We did discuss that, we do have the pipeline
Yes,
the pipeline that comes through Sandisfield.
Yeah.
And that might offer some opportunity for additional grants.
sure. I mean, not even that, you have state forest. You like, we could write a grant tomorrow for asking for $250,000 for replacement of some of the wireland firefighting gear. 90% of the stuff is wetlands. You guys can't build on a big portion of your like tax roll because of the zoning. That is the definition of the funds that are allocated by FEMA, by the state of Massachusetts, and every one of those proposals that I put together, I listed the grants that are available
Sure.
to be able to make those things happen where this is effectively zero cost to taxpayer. None of this money would come out of the budget, right? There might be some performance matching on some of the grants, like, up to like 50% or 5% or whatever. But you guys know what performance matching is on grants? Okay, all right.
Cost share.
Exactly, yeah, I didn't wanna, yeah, I mean, there's huge opportunities. The pipeline, you guys have state forest, there's, zero fire hydrants. Zero, you have no public water supply. The budget, you don't have the tax roll. I mean, like, if there was ever a town that literally like was the definition of why grants exist, like Sandisfield would fit in that box.
Sure.
Like we could go after I'm not gonna say absorbent amount of money, but
Yeah.
118 is what we're available for from now to the end of the 2025 fiscal year.
It's awesome. So I'm always leery of a good interview. And have been fooled before. So I didn't see any references on your resume. Do you
Really?
have any?
Yeah, I have
Or did I just overlook it?
I thought the last page was there is references from
Like someone we could call.
Yeah.
If appropriate, and you don't have to dig them.
Yeah, no,
out,
I'm-
but if you
I'm
could
like,
provide
my
us with
phone's on.
2 or 3 references.
I can give you as many as you want.
Yeah, just, on a professional fire level.
Sure.
Whatever you feel relevant, I don't want.
Yeah, I can, like I said, we can, that's no problem. I could have swore I had it on there, but I apologize. I can make sure that you have, I have a reference list put together.
Yeah, well, we're not making a decision tonight.
Sure.
We have to interview another candidate, so if you can get those to us and I can make.
You'll have it by the time I leave the parking lot.
Outstanding. Outstanding. That's the last of my questions. You're doing a great interview. You got great ideas. You're probably the reason why a 10-year turnover is exactly what a town needs. Fresh ideas. All of it. You're well-rounded.
I appreciate it. And like I said, obviously. At least the interview portion that I think is important to be able to say, at least to wrap this up for you guys, is that, one, if you make the choice to go with me or the other candidate, I submitted and gave you guys the SOPs, the frame, that's yours, right? So it's not like if it's not me, then, that stuff goes away, right? That is my contribution to this process. I believe in it, right? One of the things that we had talked about, it's a little bit personal, but I feel like this is completely relevant, is that like I owe a lot to the volunteer fire service personally. I grew up, had no idea who my dad was, whatsoever. And when I joined the fire service, I was unbelievably fortunate to have real strong role models in those in those situations, right? To, clean up after yourself, and don't get me wrong, like my aunt and uncle and my mom, like absolutely took care of it, but it's not the same thing, right? There's things you go out and do with dad, right? That like, and I didn't have that. So when I joined the volunteer fire service, I like the people that I surrounded myself with were tough. I mean, they were unbelievably tough. Like when I tell you like performance matter, like, if you didn't have your shit together, for a lack of a better term, like you were washing the trucks until you couldn't care what color they were. And in that process, it gave me, discipline, understanding, right? The level of commitment that things take when it comes to like doing, I mean, just basic commitment, like, not even, if you're gonna be in a relationship or take a job or whatever it is, right? The meaning of like what it is to like truly have somebody's back, right? Not just, hey, good to see you, that kind of thing. Unbelievable unbelievable skill set as far as like working on things and what have you. And so in the process of the volunteer fire service, like doing that for me, one of the things that, was like taught to me is that you have a responsibility to reintegrate the things that you have learned for the next generation of individuals. That is the sole reason, or one of the major reasons why the fire service can still exist, right? Is that when you take on, these opportunities, to do this, like you have to train the next generation of people, keep a lot of that culture and history going. You don't want it to die. This is me returning that favor, right? There is no greater privilege than the opportunity to be a fireman. There is nothing like it at all whatsoever. To be able to have the physical capability and the mental capability to be able to do it is nothing but a privilege. And to be able to sit here and do this, and even just to have the opportunity to sit in an interview and even just present to you ideas, right, that could possibly resolve these issues or at least improve it. It's a privilege to be able to do that stuff, right? To be able to help out your neighbor and to be able to help build or exist in a community there's nothing like it. And I think that what you guys are doing represents strong leadership. I've read the minutes and I know that, even on personal levels, you guys have taken some serious hits doing what it is that you're doing. And I think that sometimes doing the right thing isn't always the easy thing to do, right? And it's gonna be hard. And, even if you guys go with me, or not, regardless of what happened next, it's going to be tough. None of this is gonna get any easier before it gets better.
Sure.
And, I commend you on your leadership and, the steps that you're taking to try to say like, we need change. That's tough.
What model of cheese vehicle would you like us to buy?
I'll tell you what, don't buy it. Let me see if I can write a grant for it.
That's the right.
See, that was a trick question. I knew that.
Is it Denali okay?
I mean,
I don't like the fact he's going to tell on, because they're gonna grab him up on us so bad. Can't you look for a place in Sandisfield?
listen, if I'm offered the position, like I said, this is one of those things that is a full-time commitment. It really is, right? I don't believe, I don't think that people necessarily have the time to, give 100% to, every department. If you're in a role as a fireman, like whatever, like respond to as many calls as you can, get as much as experience you can. If I do this and I move my family, I convince my girlfriend to do this, right?
Would she like to interview for the EMT position?
She is, well, so if I get awarded the position of chief, Bree would not be able to interview for the position because that would be the definition of a confliction of interest.
That's the right answer too.
Wow, you're good. You are just-
I know the answer. However, she didn't inquire, about working, at Berkshire or something like that.
Seven Bertrand.
Yeah. So
There's
there's
plenty of-
opportunities. Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities. Like I said,
She could still be a volunteer here though.
absolutely. She can absolutely volunteer. She cannot earn a single penny. Even from the stipend program, she wouldn't be able to. That is the definition of a confliction of interest. Can't do that.
Not even the $25 an hour paid calls?
No,
No.
because I control payroll.
Wow, you're tough.
It's just, there's, listen,
It's right or wrong.
It's called.
Yeah. But
It's called ethics.
Carl?
I would like to.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it if,
Yeah.
Hypothetical situation.
I love hypotheticals.
Suppose you had a situation where there's a call, let's say it's an EMT call, and things didn't go well in that call, like. people didn't really know how to deal with the issue. They didn't do it to standards or protocols, and the outcome for the patient was less than, it was unfortunate
Sure.
and could have been better maybe. What would you do in that situation? How would you react to that situation?
So there's two parts of that. One, the part of the document that I had shot out is a standard operating procedure, right? I think when it comes to managing coaching opportunities, which is which is exactly what that is, right? If they made a mistake, right, you have to identify, was it them just being an asshole, right? Or did they really not know any better? If, obviously if it's the first choice, that's a completely different direction. If it's because they didn't know any better, you take the opportunity to coach them based off of set of SOPs and policies, right? One of the important things about setting standards is that if something goes wrong, there's a process on how to resolve it, right? My process specific to a situation where there was a question about the ability to perform would be, why did this happen? How do we fix it? What do you not know? Because it might be my fault that they don't have the comfort or the skill set to be successful doing it, right? So if that means that I should send them to a refresher, we should review the material again, whatever it is, people don't want to fail on their own, right? They don't. Nobody wants to go into anything and fail. They just don't want to do that, right? So you need to identify why it happened. You need to follow a set of standards and procedures on how to be able to resolve that and continue in education, right? A lot of those moments come through experience. And unfortunately, even if you go through an EMT class and something, they can prepare you all day to resolve those issues. But until you have that problem right in front of you, it's tough.
But on an issue like this, how would you handle it, not just with the people that were on the call, the broader department? What would you do relative to the rest of the department? Because if two people didn't know how to deal with the situation, there might be other people in the department that don't know how to
Right.
deal with it as well.
If it was an isolated incident, obviously, one of the things you do when it comes to like personnel management, this is getting into very specifics when it comes to the like firehouse management and member management. You track their skill set, right? You track the amount of calls they go on, the amount of training hours they have, and you identify, and again, using KPIs, basically like, on a sliding scale of like where they're at on the things that they're capable of doing or the things they need to work on. It really depends solely on the incident itself. If it's an isolated incident, it's a coaching opportunity. If, as an organization, we responded to a major incident that may have consumed a few resources or multiple people were having this issue, then it becomes a broader thing that you would address it. There's a process that are in the SOPs. It's called an after action report, right? And basically what you do is you review the call from start to finish. What do we do right? What do we do wrong? What's our wins? What's our losses? How do we grow from it and move forward? One of the cool things about the fire service, if it's a department related issue, then the department, is resolved. If it's an individual, like, it's an issue with one individual and nobody else having that problem, the last thing you want to do is isolate somebody by, coming up with a training, right? It's a very small department. It's a very small town, right? So if you have a training, I don't know, like, let's say like somebody backs into a mailbox with the ambulance and then we have a training on how to back into driveways. Everybody knows who did it, right? I don't have to say, I told Janie to do better, right? But like, if we have a training where everybody's involved, that's just a math equation. You're going to figure out like why we're doing that, but that can isolate Janie. But if I can pull Janie aside and say, listen, I'm not going to talk to you about anybody. We're going to put a record of conversation in your file, right? Because that's what you have to do, right? You have to have, like, you have to do these things, but there has to be a record of conversation. We addressed it. There was a deficiency that existed. We had a conversation about it. This is the resolution. I'm going to send you to 12 hours of trauma training, or I'm going to send you to 12 hours, with a driving instructor on how to back in an ambulance to be able to prevent you from backing into a mailbox again. That record of conversation is signed off on. And we have it. And then if Janie does it again,
Fire.
well, what are you doing? We just talked about it. Like, what is the issue, right? So then you start the progressive discipline process, right? And then if Janie gets upset because she doesn't like the fact that we say, like, listen, everything's been great. We really appreciate everything you've done, but it's not working out. We're protected as an agency, right? So, but this is an entire process, right?
Also talked about your three priorities. I think it was safety, performance.
Safety, performance, and compliance.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because that's an interesting notion relative to a teachable point of view to me.
Sure. So, part of the mission statement of any fire department is, you have to set your goals. Like, what are we trying to achieve, right? Otherwise you're just literally just floating around, like just kind of like putts in water, right? Existing sometimes is just not good enough. So obviously safety, right? I believe in aggressive firefighting, right? Like that is my perspective on it, right? I think that if your house is on fire, people go in the house and put it out. When somebody's trapped, you go and get them, right? When somebody has some type of problem, you show up to resolve those issues, not I did the best that I could. That is bullshit. Personal opinion, like I said, that's, this is more of an aggressive stance when it comes to like firefighting, like strategy and tactics. However, when we talk about safety, in order to be aggressive and productive in like doing these things, like being fast, putting guys in buildings, making grabs, responding, even just the ambulance calls, CPR calls, in order to do it aggressively, you have to be able to really make sure your safety policies and make sure that the understanding, like, little things like the capability of the equipment, right? Those are safety gear things. In order to be good at it and have I'm not gonna say unbelievably high, but an expectation of good performance, you have to know that the guys that are involved in doing this and girls that, that are involved in doing this stuff, like really understand like the safety limitations of what it is. We'll talk about gear, right? A safety concept is, the gear is set up to an NFPA 1501 standard, right? And it follows NFPA 1001, which is the standard for firefighting personal protective equipment. That gear has to, at minimum, be rated for 900 degrees Fahrenheit up to 30 seconds. That's the rating, right? So if we have to make a decision or, we have to go in, again, we'll use Janie's house. I have to go in and put the house out, Janie's fire out. I have to know the safety limitations of my equipment. I have to know when I go in there and say, not happening. It might be out of my control, right? It might be totally out of my control. But when we talk about safety, like, I have to know that stuff, right? Tree guy, right? I saw you had a bunch of cranes and stuff going on. You probably know that equipment. You know exactly what you can and cannot do. You can look at it and say, not happening. Or you can say, even if somebody's like, you sure? Watch this, right? Like, that level of confidence with your equipment is what I'm talking about with safety, right? Because like, you're also not going to call the insurance company and be like, listen, I don't want to talk about it, but you need to send an adjuster. Right? Like you don't want to be in that situation, right? And that comes with that comfortability. That's the safety concept. When we talk about performance, we touched on it. Performance matters, right? If somebody calls 911 because they're having a stroke, choosing the right facility, for example, to go to resolve those issues matter. If, God forbid somebody has a sudden cardiac arrest, having somebody show up that can competently do CPR increases your chances of survival. Right? If somebody, I don't know, there's a car accident, to be able to effectively get somebody out matters, right? We went to a fire in Norwich where there was a 6-year-old in the building. From the time the first new engine got on scene, went inside, grabbed and did an aggressive search, right? The house is well involved, grabbed the kid and came out. Because there was reports of somebody trapped. The house is never clear until the fire department says it's clear. That is like steadfast rule, right? I understand safety is a big concern, but we're also there to perform, right? We like I'm like going on a tangent, right? But my answer is that at the end of the day, right, the idea that everybody goes home but the homeowner is just, that's not it, right? You need to be able to confidently say that when you see guys show up, when you dial 911, right, my expectation of performance is I feel confident that I have help that is going to help me. That's what performance is, right? And that is done by achieving a certain series of benchmarks related to performance. And then when we talk about compliance, you can't do this stuff without following the law. There's compliance stuff. There's fit testing. There's yearly physicals. There's laws that you have to do to be able to make sure this stuff works. Like you have to do this stuff. It is required. Little things like posting the agenda and having like certain language in it. That is compliance. You have to do that. And any municipal organization or private has to also follow it. You have to 110%. And that's what I mean by compliance, because you could do the other two and that's fantastic. If you're not compliant with like standards, doesn't mean anything to anybody. You know, like, for example, where are the HR records for the town kept? So you are the, like, the key holder for a lot of the personnel records. So I'll just use a hypothetical. If somebody from the Department of Transport or the DOT garage goes out and gets a physical, or, you know, I think actually you guys are talking about a return from work note, right? Somebody that got injured, right? I actually don't know the situation. I just know you guys talked about it. That comes through you guys, right? You know about that stuff. You know about the status of employees. The town of Sandisfield Fire Department employees, like, they're employees, correct? Do you have a copy of their certifications? Do you have a copy of their yearly physical? Do you have a copy of their N95 fit tests? Do you have a copy of the bloodborne pathogens?
We gotta talk about her review now.
That's not your fault, right? Hold on, hold- no, no, right, but that's not your fault. That's a responsibility of the fire chief to tell you, these are the compliance things that we need to do, right? If you don't have those, I can tell you right now, and this is a state of Massachusetts thing, I looked it up before I came. Fire department's out of compliance, and if it was ever inspected, it would be placed out of service immediately. Those are required. That's like hard stop, that's just requirement, right? If the, you know, immigration shows up, employees have to have an I-9. And you have to have copies of their birth certificate or a social security card or a passport to support it, period, right? There's just, right, there's no getting around it, as much as you want to.
Taking it back.
But I don't mean to like,
HR.
and not for nothing, if you want, I can shoot you an email of the list of things that need to happen that the state of Massachusetts, and it's not just like Mass, this is a pretty common thing across the United States. You have to do that. You have to. I'm sure you've gone for the physical at least a year. You've done the N95 fit test to be able to make sure you're protected. And if you don't do it, you're liable. You own it. And that's what I talk about compliance, right? I'm not like, you know, all this stuff might exist, right? Don't get me wrong. It might totally exist. You just have to, you know, get it, right? It's the same thing like when it comes to DOT or there's an inspector, they have to have a place like to go get those records, but.
I can confidently say that a lot of the stuff you just listed off is not in compliance.
You really think so?
And
I'm surprised.
so our leadership has failed us.
So surprised. I have a question.
Absolutely.
Barbara Cormier, by the way.
Yeah, I remember we talked about the casino and you said you would swap houses for a few weeks.
No,
I'm Carl Mack.
Jeff By.
Nice to meet you, brother.
Barbara Cormier. I'm Melissa By.
Nice to meet you.
And we're usually at every selectman meeting.
I know, I saw you last night. It was fantastic.
My question to you is,
winner.
Sure.
you're hired, say you're hired,
Okay, hypothetically.
which I say you're hired.
Fantastic. I appreciate
As
it.
far as I hope, I pray that they hire you.
Yeah.
I'll say an extra prayer tonight, you go up to the firehouse the first meeting.
Yep.
First thing they tell you, you don't have an office in here, you can't sit here.
Okay.
I don't like your looks, go out and shove you in the back room of an old building where you're by yourself, how you gonna deal? How you
Sure.
gonna deal?
I, first thing I do is I review the lease.
Yeah.
I would ask, who this benefits.
Yeah.
Why? Like, what are we doing?
You Fold up and go home.
No, I see there's plenty of desks in here. I'm serious, there's plenty of desks in here. I mean, the only thing that like,
You'll make it work.
listen,
Yeah.
if me not having a computer, a place to sit, that's not gonna change to be able to do things. If that is the type of relationship that wants to exist, hypothetically, and I'm not saying that this is true, and I'm not, you know, if, like I said, if anybody's, that is not the type of relationship that I wanna have. However, inconveniencing me is not gonna stop me from being able to manage the responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
It's not at all whatsoever. If being able to use a specific computer in an office, as long as I'm accessible, because one of the requirements for it is the fire inspections. I need to be able to have office time because you need to be able to come if you want to build something, right? The accessibility aspect. So, I mean, listen, if I gotta pull the ambulance out and set up a desk right there and smile and sell lemonade as everybody drives by just to prove a point, I will, right? I'm not gonna an office
I just want you to be prepared, there's a lot of personality in Sandisfield.
I have no doubt that's one of the only downfalls of a small town, right?
Exactly.
Is that there's a lot of emotional bonds. I am not intimidated by any stretch when it comes to political nuances, right?
Still.
The only thing I would say, you know, and I probably shouldn't say this in an interview, but I will, because I think this is also important. If you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. That's just the reality of things, right? I would never, like I said, I have zero intentions of anything like that ever happening. I don't think I don't think the fire department has an appetite for it. I don't think that the select board has an appetite for it. I don't know the community has an appetite for it. I don't think that's in anybody's best interest. I'm assuming you're talking about what happened to Henry.
Yeah.
And
God, you can know the names and
I
everything.
did, yeah, I read it and I know there is a confusion of who is supposed to call who. I will call you every hour on the hour, even if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning. You laugh, I swear to God, I will 110%, like there would be no communication issues, I promise.
Don't call me at 2 a.m, I'll be sleeping.
John's sleeping at 8 o'clock.
Well, I promise you, if you call me at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll still answer the phone, cause I know you're not asking to go hang out. I totally understand that.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I don't think,
Ask Zoom.
Zoom, anybody on Zoom want to ask a question while we have our?
Yes, I
Who is
would raise
this?
my, sorry, Bridget Ruthman, I would raise my hand. Thank you.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi, are you, first of all, there are a whole lot of fire departments that are not fit test appropriate at this point, and that is sort of forgiven as a volunteer service.
I don't, who, just out of curiosity, who told you that was forgiven? That's a OSHA compliance standard and there is no forgiveness.
Okay,
when it
I've been a
comes-
firefighter for more than 40 years.
Okay,
Volunteer. Are you
Okay.
are you certified in Massachusetts as an EMT? And do you, I might have missed this, I apologize. Are you planning to move here to be here?
so the answer is I am a licensed Connecticut EMT. I had reached out to OEMS in Massachusetts, which is the one that provided me the reference material related to the N95 fit testing that we talked about when it comes to the yearly compliance. I do plan on relocating to the town of Sandisfield if I'm afforded the opportunity. It would take me anywhere between 30 and 60 days for my reciprocity to go through, and then I'd be an active EMT on the basic level.
Hold on, hold on. You will need to be nationally registered to do that, to pass a
Yep.
test, or you're gonna have to go through all of the education to do that. So do you plan on becoming nationally registered?
So in order to be able to get your EMT in the state of Connecticut, you have to be a nationally registered EMT.
That's not true. In order to be an EMT in Connecticut, you need to pass Connecticut regulations and certification. In Massachusetts, you can either pass national registry or Massachusetts standards. Which
Yeah,
would you do?
So in Connecticut, when I took my EMT back in 2011, the state of Connecticut elected not to use their written test unless you were under the age of 18. But they elected not to use their written test, but to use the national registry test. So in order to be able to obtain
Yes.
your initial Connecticut EMT, unless you're under the age of 17, you must complete your national registry EMT. I have my
Correct.
national registry EMT.
You are nationally registered as an
I'm a
EMT.
nationally
Okay.
registered emergency medical technician. I think
Okay,
I have
so
the card in
that's-
my wallet.
That's not a far stretch then to become Massachusetts certified.
No,
Okay,
no, like I
And-
said, they told me I already have the paperwork, 30 to 60 days.
okay, and you have a plan? Listen, I say this with a bit of a laugh, but Sandisfield has a bit of a housing shortage. Are you sure that
Sure.
you can live nearby?
Before Mike answers this, I just want to point out that both of these issues were brought up and discussed and answered.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
he can
it's,
continue.
so I found a house in Tallinn. It's probably, I think it's like 14 minutes or 15 minutes from the firehouse. I had a conversation with a lady. It's a rental. Had a conversation with a lady and explained the situation that's going on. And she was kind enough to take a deposit on the place, you know, pending the outcome of how this goes. So if I'm afforded the opportunity to be the chief, you know, obviously, you know, however long it takes for, you know, the check to clear, but I'm assuming I can get keys pretty quick. The other thing too, is I know there's short-term rentals in the area.
Okay.
In order to be able to do it.
And you're a retired Waterbury firefighter?
No. I wish I was retired. I'm not. I was I was a firefighter in the town of Waterford.
Waterford,
In
okay.
Waterford in Connecticut. I did a little time in American Ambulance. Actually right now I'm exploring the opportunity to go for my paramedic.
Okay,
Which-
so you didn't work for the Waterbury, Connecticut.
No,
Fire
I own a Waterbury Tower Ladder fire truck.
You own a what?
I own a ladder truck.
There's
Okay,
3 fire trucks.
Yeah, from the town of Waterbury. I bought it from him.
okay. And
Yeah.
just rhetorically, I'm sorry, could you just?
No, it's okay.
Could you just explain why this is so interesting to you to pursue this job?
Absolutely. So, to me, I think that Sandisfield is in a unique position where whoever provides the leadership for the organization really is going to be able to make a positive and effective change. And I think that, obviously I love the fire service. I genuinely do. And I mean that 110%. And I believe in the volunteer system. I'm not really actually for, paid departments if you can prevent it. I truly am for the volunteer system, but, I could go and get hired again and, work for a municipality. The example I used earlier was like Boston, or I could work for Waterbury, or even like my local town. But the problem is that you're not really going to be able to affect any real change, right? You're not going to make an impact. And my goal in doing this is I want to have the opportunity to make a good impact, right? To be able to have conversations like this in a forum and be able to listen, obviously you said you're a fireman, right? So, to be able to listen to your concerns and listen to the things that are going on, and you'd be like, listen, Mike, I know that this is the way it's supposed to be, but I think we could do it better like this. And the fact that, you could have the select board back you, the fact that, the position of chief in this municipality, especially being smaller, I can make those changes without a bunch of mother may I, and, you got to know the secret password and use this door. Like, there's none of that stuff, right? Like, we can improve a process and we can improve the way that we provide fire protection and do business in the town of Sandisfield, just based on good ideas, trial and error. And it's attractive to me because I want to be in a place where you can make a real difference by just trying, right? The
Okay.
best thing I'm going to do in a big city department is I get a fancy pension, 25 years. If I work a bunch of, overtime, I'll, like, that stuff's great. But,
In the town of in the town of Norwich.
in
Not
the city of
Waterbury.
Norwich, in New
Yeah.
York City, in Boston, or any municipal,
Hold on. Are you an active EMT?
in Connecticut.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. You're an active EMT. Okay.
yes. I can give you my license number.
And you understand that, and you do calls. And you understand that in Sandisfield, fire calls are a very small portion of emergency services. Our greatest concern and the increasing demand is for EMS.
Yes. I am very aware. One of the things that we didn't actually talk about is I also have, in my time of being a fireman, and again, this is me saying this as humbly as possible, is I was able to also meet a lot of people that are a hell of a lot smarter than I am. And one of the things that I plan on doing, affording this opportunity, is to also have people that I know that are smarter than me to come in and help me do this. One of the individuals that I know, his name is Chris Collinaire. He's a paramedic for Wyndham. He sits on the Connecticut OEMS board for paramedic protocols. So he's the one that basically says you can and cannot do these things. He developed the paramedic intercept program for Charlotte Hungerford Hospital. And he's been doing it for 25 years. Fantastic friend. This guy knows rescue stuff like you wouldn't believe. But anyways, the point that I'm making is if I'm afforded this opportunity, I'm going to refer to people that know more than I do as well. I'm not saying that I'm going to come in here and be the end all be all encyclopedia of solutions, right? But I know the people to ask when I don't know. And one of the guys that I intend to bring in, if I'm allowed to do this, it's going to look at the ambulance billing reform, our billable capabilities, our precepting policies, our QA, collection rate, payer matrices, all of that stuff related to the ambulance and staffing solutions is going to be Chris. He knows better than I do. And I intend to use his ability to work with me, trusting him to be able to provide solutions that come back to the department and come back to the town and say, hey, here's what we can do.
Thank you. Thank you. And to reiterate the question, you have been an active EMT. You have been an active.
I have continuously held my certification since 2012.
In the
Without
back
fail.
in the back of an ambulance, not just the
In the
car.
back of an ambulance.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. All right, well, I think I'm gonna conclude the interview. We're gonna deliberate amongst ourselves in executive session.
Yeah, I'll if you want, I'll hang out outside and
Well, it's up to you. We're not gonna make a decision tonight.
No,
We're
that's-
just gonna kind of digest what we just heard.
sure.
And then once we have the interview with the other candidate, we'll circle back and we'll make a decision in open meeting.
Yeah, no problem.
So that'll be on the 16th, so that you're aware, that's when we're scheduling that for, right?
Do you guys have any other questions or concerns? I know there's a lot. There is genuinely a lot.
No, you did a lot of research and I respect that.
Thank you.
You really found out what you're getting involved with. There was a claim made by a previous chief that they didn't understand what
I
they're
read
getting
that.
into. Which I won't get into it, but you didn't do that, so I'm glad,
No.
I'm glad you did your own one.
Yeah, Jeannie was nice enough to sit on the phone with me for an hour and answer every question that I possibly had that I couldn't resolve on my own. But I think this is good. And like I said, even if oh, I'm sorry. One of the things that we had talked about in the first interview is that I made the recommendation in an effort to save money for the town, and especially as this reorganization exists, is to allow me to be able to fill the EMS administrator role or EMS coordinator role. I forgot how you guys have it listed, and like just make it one position, right? There's no reason to have, in my opinion, the fire and EMS concepts different, right?
Sure.
You kind of want them together, right? Especially if you're gonna be negotiating with insurance companies and payer matrices. That is my, I have the ability, I have the qualifications to be able to do it. And I think that it would, it would just save time and money. I'm not asking for the second stipend.
Sure,
I'll just assume the responsibility.
sure, no, I respect that. Carl, did you have some?
Yeah, I'm assuming you guys aren't gonna come back out of executive session because you're not making a decision, so
Yeah.
we're basically done.
Yeah, we're done, yeah. Yeah, so I would just motion to enter executive session. Under general law, chapter 38, section 21A, purpose 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union person.
Second,
All in favor?
Robert Fidel, aye.
You said aye.
John Field, aye.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys calling me back. I told Jenny, I was like, well, someone's moving on the island, yeah.
All right, good night, everybody.
Seriously, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, thanks for